When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things Podcast. We have a work-in-progress title. We've brainstormed some titles here, and the title we've landed on currently, we may change it, is Do Small Businesses Need Web Dev Agencies? So to give you some context beyond the title, of course, we're going to be talking about sort of the small business website. And I mean from almost a marketing perspective, which is person calls you up, says, yo, I need a small business site. What does that look like in 2024? What did that look like in the past? And has it changed? Has it not? Is it useful, etc.? So we're going to be talking about that because it's a very sort of quick and easy package deal that you can offer as a web dev agency, but maybe it's not worth it for one or both of the parties involved. Who knows? We'll explore that today. So, if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And we do have a Scrimba affiliate link. Discount code is still pending, or discount amount is still pending. And I will include that information on htmlallthethings.com in the show notes, of course, so you know what's up. And that link is scrimba.com/links/html all the things. And that'll also be in the show description as well. That link will be. Before I begin this episode, I have a weird preamble. Mike, I have a question. I want your hot take on this. I warned you that we were going to do a hot take, but I didn't tell you what this is. And I experienced this morning, and I've experienced this hundreds of times, so I'm sure you have as well. And do you know when you download a new app, and it's a much deeper question than this, so bear with me, but you download a new app, and it takes you through a tutorial. Now, that tutorial is always questionable, right? Some people want more hand-holding, some people want less hand-holding. Some people want no hand-holding at all. You just sort of figure it out. Some people want it done differently. And right now, it's just sort of like little pop-ups, like almost like little speech bubbles that'll point toward things and that type of thing. And sometimes it literally is a speech bubble if it's a game where like a little character will pop up and be like, click that button to build your base and that type of thing. So it's kind of like a stop, look at this option, stop, look at this option, look at this option. And sometimes it's guided a bit. So it'll say, click that button, you click it, then it's like, hey, look, now you can make a blog post or whatever, click the blog post, etc. I have, that's a big conversation. It's probably a conversation for another day. That's not really my problem. My problem is, so today I was on the phone we were just renewing our business license. No big deal, just a Canadian, whatever, business license we're renewing. And I was on the phone with them. And I needed to go and get some information from my phone. And so I needed my phone number, I needed some other things, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So I went in to get my contact card just so that it's right in front of my face. So I don't say the wrong, phone number. I don't say the wrong this. I don't say the wrong that because I have a business phone and a personal phone. And I went in there and immediately in 2 or 3 of the apps, because I was gaining multiple bits of information, I was stopped. I've used these apps before and they've updated and I was stopped and it's hey, take a look at this. Hey, take a look at that. Hey, by the way, our terms of service have changed. Hey, look at that. Hey, look at this. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm wow, I must not be a very put together person because all my apps are all over the damn place. And then I thought to myself, it's not really it is and it isn't. And I don't know, maybe this is the hot take is it is and it isn't my responsibility to go in here and sort of clean this stuff up. But there's no way for me to know that this stuff's going to need cleaning up. I'm going in here to quickly grab my phone number, quickly grab my contact card, my virtual contact card. I'm going in here to quickly grab some graphics. I'm quickly, I'm running around in my phone trying to grab stuff. And there's all these things grappling for my attention. And I understand that in the social media sense where, they want to, min-max your time on the app and they want to make sure you're on there as much as possible. But I'm in the settings menus, I'm in some utilitarian apps, business card app, whatever. What do you think about this? We can't be so put together that things are just constantly bugging us. A classic one is we've used our bank app, how many times? You go pay somebody and then it's hey, I did an update. I'm trying to do this. And it's there's got to be a better way to handle this, because I'm opening my bank app, I'm not opening it up every day to like see if there's a new tutorial. And when I open it, I'm doing something. I'm trying to send money, receive money, check something, pay a bill. I'm not being like, hey, I have like a little extra time, let me do your tutorial real quick. So what's your like hot take on that? Like, it's very intrusive.
So is this specifically about the tutorial parts of all of these updates, or is this more about the fact that apps just update a lot?
It's a good question, honestly. It's what it ultimately is it's the interruption. Like, if you told me right now, if you're like, a great example would be if you're like, oh, Mike, or like Matt, like you tell me, not I tell you, I guess. So you tell me, hey, Matt, like you forgot to email somebody, or you forgot to, forget the email. You forgot to text somebody, like you forgot to text someone, you forgot to text David Lindahl, whatever, friend of the show. You forgot to text David. We're supposed to meet up or something. And I go, oh, shoot, you're right. So I just pick up my phone real quick. And while maybe even you're talking on the show, I'll just like open it up and be like, hey, man, yeah, like, the 24th works or whatever. I'm just making that up. But that's my intent. Like in my head, I open the texting app, I go to David's name, I type in my message, I press send. But I'm being interrupted by like, hey, we got new stickers. Hey, look at that thing over there. Did you know we got this? Did you know the corn exists? It's like, the band or the friggin' vegetable, like, stop bugging me. Like, I'm trying to send a message.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so it's just the fact that everything's trying to get your attention to the new features that are being present in all these apps, and the apps are constantly updating. I think it all stems from the same spot. So regardless of the answer to that question, is software is never complete, and that's like a paradigm, right? Like that is the definite. Like if software is being used by users, it is never complete. So you're constantly updating, you're constantly adjusting to users' needs, you're constantly just trying to justify the existence of a development team. That's a whole other argument that we can have. Stuff is being updated whether you like it or not, and stuff will continue to be updated whether we like it or not. Now, the second part of the question is like, should we be continually notified about new features as they're put in every time we open an app? And what's the best way to handle that? This one's tough because on the one hand, as a developer and as someone that builds new features on apps, I see the value of notifying a user about a new feature, because if we don't notify them, 99% of the time, they won't know it exists.
Exactly. Yep.
That's the reality. And from developers' perspective, it's like maybe we build a new feature every few months. We notify a user every few months about this new feature. That's not a big deal. The issue comes in is the fact that every app that you have has that same cadence or whatever. And therefore, no matter what you're doing on a daily basis, you're going to be opening an app that hit that 3-month or monthly cadence of a new feature being built. So to a user, they don't really care about your cadence. They care about all of their apps combined. And if they're constantly being bombarded with new features and descriptions and bubbles and guided tours of new features, it can get a little bit exhausting to a point where people just get app fatigue. And that's a real thing too. Like people just get tired of constantly having to open up apps to get information, to a point where they might uninstall your application to simplify their lives. And that's, that might be a problem for you depending on what kind of application you're building, depending if you're trying to gather people's attention or information. That could be a huge issue. So you have to weigh the fact that you might annoy people with too much guidance, and you might, or like the other part of that is like if you don't give them the guidance, they won't know about the new features that you've requested. So I don't have an answer to this, because I think this problem is something that everyone is like every development studio is currently living through and maybe trying to solve. Maybe it's unsolvable in a sense, because any solution you propose here will probably only help a small number of people. And what I mean by that is like a solution like maybe we do it so that people can opt in or opt out of these new feature bubbles. But the reality is like no one's going to even get to the point where they find the place to opt in or opt out of it. Like, what are you going to do? A feature bubble to tell the people that they can opt in and opt out of feature bubbles? Like, how are you going to notify the user of that? Like, it becomes a rabbit hole there. And then you're like, okay, well, what happens if we just disable all feature bubbles and you let the user just find stuff on their own? It's like, yeah, that could work, and that's maybe the way I'd lean towards. But then again, you get to the point where you have to really focus on UX at that point, so much so that when a new feature comes out, it's easy enough for people to find and use it without you guiding them. And that takes a whole level of UX UI design that most companies probably don't have. So it's like, holy shit, like we have a million different problems. I think the reality is that being notified of a new feature as it releases is probably the lesser of all evils. So I don't know, like as long as it's a one-time thing, when you close it, like that little notification goes away. I feel like that's where we're going to be living for the foreseeable future.
It is an imperfect problem, right? And not informing, or it is an imperfect solution, but that's just because everyone's using the apps under different contexts. If you were to jump on to, like in my case, I'm, quickly going to answer David in this particular hypothetical in a quick, message. And the sort of main thing there is that it's quick. It's just in the middle of a podcast. I'm just sort of quickly doing it when I'm not talking. Whereas many other people are not necessarily doing that. They're opening a text app. They're going to go message somebody, and they're okay with being interrupted to be told about, whatever, Meta AI or Gemini or whatever you can do in the Messages app now, right? Oh, look at this AI thing. Look at this new sticker. Look at this new picture. Look at these new things. So it does make sense that it's like a one size fits all solution. That more or less now it's a one size fits most, right? It's sort of like, hey, we have to tell you about new features because otherwise innovation will be stifled. And I agree with that. Like I would still be using the basic text app from 10 years ago. I wouldn't even think of it, right? Where I'm like, where's more stickers? Like I wouldn't be trying to dig that up, right? But now I use stickers sometimes, right? And that's probably because a little tooltip, a little message, a little pop-up, speech bubble, whatever showed up and told me. I almost feel as though like phones need like an urgent mode or something, which is ridiculous and probably not going to happen. But that's usually when things, catch me where I'm like, holy fuck, I got to like quickly pay this bill, or I have to change this or I have to change that. And it's like, you're in kind of a big hurry. You're in a big rush, and it just becomes, a hectic situation. And somebody's just trying to tell you like, we have new settings in the background. It's like, please, like I'm trying to pay this bill. It's due in 10 minutes. Or I'm trying to do this, or I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do something quickly. And it's like, did you know we have new fonts? Try the new font page. Ice cream's available, just ridiculous stuff. And it gets to be too much. And I guess even in a bit of imperfection there is if you are a person that's in a rush or you don't care about new features and you just skip through the bubbles, you're also missing it. So in a way, like the developers have failed to show you, but it's not like they can take over your whole screen and like specifically say, you must look at this feature, you must go through our tutorial, because that'll really annoy people. Like, hey, I want to send a text message now, like, or I need to, right? It's urgent. And like, you're telling me like, no, you got to take 30 seconds out of your day, which sounds ridiculous, but take 30 seconds out of your day and you must do my tutorial. I mean, you do that 2 or 3 times in a day if you're using multiple apps, and you're going to be whipping those apps out the window. At least I would. So it's a weird scenario. It's a weird problem to have. And it's a weird thing that just sort of like, didn't pop into my head. It happened to me, just this morning, and it was annoying, and I thought I would get your hot take. But let's get into small business websites, get into web development agencies, and what's that all about? So Mike and I have been running a web development agency for quite a while, and one of the very common things we did in the beginning, and we still hear about all the time, is sort of a standard package that web development agencies offer, including ourselves. So we would used to offer something called like a basic site plan, basic website plan, or a small business plan. There's tons of different ways to call this. It's commonly called just a small business website as well. And this is a very sort of typical package, if you think of it, when it consisted of 5 pages. So it would usually be something like an email form on the contact page, a slider on the home page, and then some other stuff on the home page, of course, a gallery page for an image gallery where you'd show off some of the photos of your work, an about us page, we started this 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And then one applicable miscellaneous page. So maybe a product page or something that was specific to that small business. And similar, basic small business packages are still very common today. Like I looked it up on Fiverr for like just the Fiverr marketplace. And the very first person I clicked in, I think I just typed in web development, clicked in, and boom, there was a 3-page, a 5-page or whatever. Now, the problem with taking on these small projects as a web development agency is that they're usually expected, and I want to be clear that I'm making a generalization here. They're usually expected to be delivered perfect, fast, and cheap. So remember, we call this thing, a basic website, but it's commonly for small business websites. These are small business websites. And perfect, fast, and cheap is a lethal combination, right? These websites are very, very simple. They're 5 pages. There's not a lot of interactivity. There's no e-commerce. So you may only charge, say, $500 or something along those lines, depending on where you live. And unfortunately, at least here in Canada, like $500 is really not that much. And if you want it to be perfect, I mean, you might be working on one of these projects for more than a month, sitting there going back and forth over whether this text should be centered, left aligned, right aligned. No, left aligned. Oh, it should be to the right. Oh, no, it should be this way. Oh, no, it should be there. Oh, I don't like this resolution. It's this and that and this and that. And it becomes more about this perfection, and we're chasing perfection, and we're still chasing sort of cheapness for that $500 package. This is, very common. This perfect, fast, and cheap expectation is very common because a lot of small businesses, and again, these are generalizations, but a lot of small businesses are not flush with cash. So they commission jobs at a low price point, and they need the results to pay off quickly because usually they do not have a lot of cash reserves, not a lot of cash flow, right? So they're like, hey, if I pay for something, it's an investment. I need that money back. And a big problem is we've had countless requests to build small 5-page websites, small business websites, whatever you want to call them. And they almost always request that we get them to the #1 spot in Google. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, it's a 5-pager, there's no SEO plan. And they just go like, well, just do good SEO, right? It's a small business. They're not a digital business. They're not in the game of websites. They're looking for a service. They can go to other places and get, things done. They can get contracting work done. They can get their car fixed. They can get painters to paint their house. And there's varying price points. There's varying timelines and those type of things. And they treat web development in the same way oftentimes, right? They want it done quickly. And the other thing too is you as the web developer almost always have to involve the client, obviously, right? You have to say, hey, I need some copy. Like what do you want on your site? I build, tons of websites. And if you're only doing these small business websites at $500 a pop, you're going to be doing a ton of sites in order to remain profitable. And unfortunately, a lot of times the clients will be like, well, you should know what's up, or like you should research it, or they just won't give you any copy. We've had people give us like 5 or 10 lines of copy, less than 1,000 words for the whole website. And you keep telling them, hey, this is not going to rank. This is not going to rank. And they just say like, well, like if you know what you're doing, like it'll rank. That's just not the case. Like unless you're paying Google and, you're getting into Google ads. And at that point, you're not organically ranking. You're paying to be on certain keywords and things like that. And these like small business websites are sort of a staple of the industry, right? They're almost like a classic. Many people are probably thinking like they're gone, right? They're not really around anymore. And that's just not the case. Like I mentioned, the Fiverr situation. And the reason why this episode came up is because there's actually 2 businesses that have contacted me just in the past week or so that want websites like this. They didn't call them, hey, I want a small business website. But when they outline what they want, it's like, yeah, a classic basic website plan / small business website. So these things are still very much, expected from the market, at least from my small sample size. These things are very well expected. We're seeing other people be building them, again, Fiverr and that type of thing. But the web has evolved a lot. And this sort of 5-page website has been around for over 10 years, like well over 10 years. Mike and I were offering these packages 10 years ago, $500, $250 if you use our design, things like that. Just quick, bang, bang, bang. Let's try to get it done. And then you find out that, it's a little bit harder, a little bit, easier said than done.
I'm going to probably kind of circle back to this point that I'm going to make right now, because we're going to talk about like the relevancy of small business websites a little bit later in this talk. But I do want to mention something right off the top with small business websites. In my opinion, if you're an agency out there or you're a developer that's trying to sell this type of work to a client, Matt and I have a ton of experience with this. You need to sell not the product isn't the 5-page website. When you're selling to someone, you're not selling them, hey, I'm building you a 5-page website. The product is you're getting someone to be online, right? You're getting them more customers through the door. Part of that solution, part of it, will be that 5-page website. That's fine, right? But when you're selling someone a solution, not a product, that opens up the door for, first of all, much more work for you in terms of, hey, I need this content from you. If you can't provide it to me, I'm going to have to generate it, create it, hire out, whatever. Like that's more money on your end. I need X and Y as that. Like the small business website just fits into one hole of a bunch of different pegs that you need to kind of put into place to make sure that a product is successful online or a company is successful online. Especially nowadays, especially in 2024, there's just so much competition out there. Just having a website out there is almost, I don't want to say useless, but because of all of these scammy websites and the search being like Google search is just not as good as it used to be. Like people don't trust it as much. It's been shown that the trust for Google search results has gone down and down over the years because everyone has tried to game the system to the point where it's just every click, every link at the top of Google is almost constantly a ad-filled shitstorm. People just don't use it as much. So you need ways around that. You need ways to get to a point where your website is part of the process, but you need to get in front of people's eyes. And that's not just a website anymore, unfortunately. So when you're out there trying to sell your services, don't sell website services, sell solutions for getting a company online.
And that is more difficult, right, than just trying to sell a package. But yes. Mike and I, like you and I have learned, Mike, that when you try to sell a package, it sounds great on paper. Hey, cool, we'll get 10 people a month. We'll quickly build them out, these $500 websites, make, say, $5K a month, quick and easy, whatever. We use the same tools. We maybe even use the same templates, maybe even their tools and templates that we've built. And that's great, right? Really, really fast. That's just not the case. Like you're just straight up not going to get it done. Like it just doesn't work that way. People are people. And like I mentioned before, like you might be working for a whole month fighting somebody on like whether or not like a background image is okay. Or we had one person, I remember way back in the day, remove all the text from their site. They were following the design of one of their suppliers, and the supplier got like a brand new website right in the middle of us doing their website. And they just paid for a small business website, small 5-pager. And they were like, well, let's follow this like renowned designer. And like, what? And there was no text and there was no this and there was no that. And it was very like sort of artsy. And their website became like a slider with a contact form and about 200 words across the whole thing, if that. I don't even think it was that many. And it just became like, okay, man, like you're paying, $500, maybe $750 for this thing. This is just not going to work. This is like beyond the scope of that. And that's kind of what Mike is talking about with the pegs, where like people think like, oh, like I've bought a package. From our perspective, it's like they're buying a package and here's the parameters. They're in this little box. But the customers want to break out of that box and go like, well, I'm paying for a website, so I need all this, I need that, I need this. And it's just not as smooth. And it's not as, easy to keep people sort of contained in that box. So the thing that looks great on paper isn't great in reality, at least not in our experience. And assuredly, something like a Fiverr marketplace, I don't know how great the web development, web design is on there. I've never tried it. But things like Fiverr have tools to keep things under wraps, right? Where they say, hey, you only paid for 2, you're demanding 5. And then there's going to be some like back and forth, and maybe even Fiverr will get involved and be like, hey, you can't be demanding 5 pages when you paid for 2 and things like that, right? Like there's like more parameters set up around it. But again, like that's more to deal with, and you got to pay Fiverr a cut, I would imagine, and things like that. And so this isn't, as smooth as what it looks like on paper, sort of what it looks like, not as smooth as it seems on paper is what I'm trying to say. And the big thing here, and like Mike mentioned, you have to have multiple parts. Like websites are, complex in terms of the marketing side of things, not even the technical side of things. They can be technically complex, of course, but if they're a small business site, it's mostly content that's really going to be driving a lot of your traffic. And that's because, the web has evolved. Like the trust, as Mike has said, has gone down in the Google search. There's a lot of spam on there. There's a lot of people that have gamed the system and all that stuff. And so you can't just have like this 5 pages and just expect to do absolutely amazingly online. Like you have to play the game a bit. You have to do some SEO stuff. And many of these small businesses, they don't have the capability to do that, right? Getting traction online requires a lot of effort, requires a lot of expertise, and it requires long-term devotion. And small businesses just don't have that for it. It's nothing against them. Like, we're a small business too. It's nothing against small business. It's just like they do not have the time, money, and all the rest of it behind it. So if someone approaches you, like I said, 2 people approached me for these small business websites just this week. Well, what does a 5-page website do for you? Well, we would call this like slightly more advanced than what we call a business card website. So a business card website to us is basically just a site. It's super basic, right? It's usually 1 page. And it's just literally like, hey, this is my name, this is my business, here's my phone number, or here's my location if you have a physical location. And it's something where a business or an individual can point people towards. Like, hey, I'm at an event, go to, whatever, business.com, whatever your business is, and you can find my address, you can find this, you can find that. And it gives you like a sense of legitimacy, right? It's a place where people can easily refer to it, they can bookmark it, they can check it anytime. And then customers can reliably find things on there, like contact information, like a phone number or an email address if they need to contact you. Now, so what are the benefits of a small business website then, right? Like, it's more advanced than a business card website. It shows legitimacy just like the business card website, right? It's showing like, hey, here's my gallery, like I mentioned. Look at all the work I've done. You can get potential customers once they're on the site, though, which is a big if. Like, if someone's 99% through their decision-making process, they go to your site and they look on your gallery and they're like, oh, you do landscaping and you did exactly the same waterfall thing that I want in my backyard. Okay. And then, final decision. There's a chance of that. It's a great place to point people to on business cards. I've already mentioned events, right? Hey, go to my website, go check that out. But on business cards too, it's just a nice place where it's like, oh, Matt handed me this business card. What is it? Oh, go to his website at htmlthings.com. Oh, this is what he does. And this is like a legitimate, looks like a legitimate business, a legitimate blog, a legitimate podcast, those type of things. And also, it's a reliable place to house information that your customers may need. So we've already mentioned the phone number, your address, like physical address, your email, but also other things like, if you're a small business, maybe you shut down for the winter, maybe you shut down for vacation or things like that. You can go and update your website, and it's a reliable place where people can go in there and go, oh, they're closed this weekend due to this. They're open this weekend. Oh, they're open late this day because of this. And it's like it's a big old source of truth. It's a big old source of truth right from the source, which is important for some businesses, of course. The problem with a small business website is actually getting somebody onto the site in the first place. SEO is going to play a huge part in this, and I'm going to have a massive conversation about this in a little bit here, so I'm not going to delay on it here. But SEO is a big part of this. Another problem is that if someone is worried about price enough to get a small business website, meaning from the perspective of the agency, so someone calls me and they're like, hey, I want a small business website, and they want to specifically stay in that little package deal, that little $500 package deal. They may not have the time to dedicate to updating their site's content. And I mean, just something as simple as updating the gallery images. Now those gallery images get dated, new phone numbers, they get a new phone, whatever. Those phone numbers don't get updated on the site. The contact page gets really stale then. This is a problem. And so the efficacy, which is already sort of questionable a bit, right? Like, it's not you're not writing the biggest blog in the world, right? Where you're going to be getting millions and millions of people on your site. So now it's dated. Like, how many times have you gone to a local business? Like, you've, seen someone cut grass and you're like, oh, I'm going on vacation. Maybe I'll hire this person to cut my grass a couple weeks. You go and look them up and it's on this terrible old website. There's literally 80s mowers on there and stuff. And you're like, what in the hell? What is this? Why is this so janky? And sometimes, for some businesses that works because they'll just have whatever, mechanics or people that are very utilitarian looking, and they know them and they're just looking for their phone number, or they're looking for what products they have or something like that. But oftentimes it'll turn new customers away if you have dated gallery images, or they try to call the phone number and the phone number goes to someone else or is disconnected. And also, if someone is really pushing for a small business website, from the agency's perspective, this is a bit of a red flag because it might be an afterthought to their business. So, they chances are not a digital business. They're not making sites. They're not big into blogging, those type of things. They're into shelf making or whatever it is they do, HVAC or whatever. So they don't really, quote unquote, really need a website. Some of them will, if they have a big marketing plan, they got a marketer and they need a website for part of the marketing. But a lot of these people will actually not have a plan. They just think, oh, I have a business. I have a business name. I have a logo now. I have some, business colors. I better get a website. And they just think they need a website because that's what they need. And they think the website's going to automatically service their business. And that's just not the case. Like, maybe you get lucky with a few leads, but you have to put, work and time into it. And when you deal with people that don't really need a website, it's a problem. I mean, Mike and I have had this problem even recently where people don't actually need it. And so they just sort of like throw it to the side, and you only ever deal with them when they're in a panic, like when there's a problem or when like they get forced to by their bosses to call you to get it up, like get the website up and that type of thing. And it's like, you're never dealing with them when they're happy and be like, man, I got this cool idea. I want to try this new slider. It's like, that's a decent person to deal with, right? It's like, cool. Like, they're enthusiastic. My work is actually helping them. They're happy with the work. That's great. It's not like my boss says that this slider has to be 5 seconds longer per slide. Like, you can get messages like that from people because they don't actually need the website. It's an afterthought. And that is a problem with a small business website from the agency's perspective.
It's a huge problem. And honestly, this is where maybe controversial, but working with these kinds of clients is not worth it. Maybe when you're first starting out to get some good recommendations, you can spend a year or maybe less even just grinding through these if you're lucky enough to get any work, because at that point, you have to prove yourself. As you graduate from your initial stages as an agency or as a freelancer, you need to start looking again to be a solutions architect rather than a web developer or business, like small business site creator. These $500 clients, and I say this knowing that some of them are great, right? Like, I'm not saying every single one of them is a disaster, but more often than not, when price becomes the focal point of your negotiations in a low price bracket, it becomes evident that the working relationships between you is probably not going to be an easy one. And that you should take that advice very to heart, like very seriously, because if you're working with constantly negative, cost conscious people that they don't see the value of your work, you're going to burn out from this industry. Just the reality. Like, it's going to grind you to the bone because a lot of people are like that. A lot of people view what you're doing as a web developer as easy. It shouldn't cost a lot of money, and it should just be done perfectly to the intent that they require. That's only in their head, and they have not been able to articulate, etc., etc., etc. And then if you deviate from any of those lines, you're the idiot, and you should stop being in this industry. That's their thoughts, right? When the reality is that it's a much more complex situation, and people that don't respect that complexity and don't respect the relationship that they have with you, you need to start saying no as quickly as possible in your career. I say that knowing that initially you might have to eat some shit and grind through these kinds of clients and figure this out on your own. But as soon as you can, try to find your way to the right clients. And the right clients, we can have a whole podcast episode on this part, but the right client for a web development agency is a client that's willing, that it understands that they need to work with you, that understands that your work is valued, and that understands that you're creating something for them to profit from. Like, your relationship is transactional in a sense that, yeah, you're being paid to do it, but at the end of the day, it's going to make them more money. That's the mentality that they have to have. If they don't have that mentality, it's a useless undertaking, because if they think that your relationship is transactional in a way that's going to lose them money, why are they even doing this? Like, just to be part of the norm, just to be part of the online ecosystem, that's dumb.
I mean, it's something I definitely struggle with. Like, I always try to help everybody. That's always how I feel. Like, I don't know if it's just like my demeanor or if it's my, coming from IT or whatever. I don't know. I always try to help people, and like saying no to people is a big problem. And we've said yes to people that we definitely should not have. And it's a big problem. It's a memeable problem. I mean, we've seen memes now of things where it's like, the $10,000 client, when you say, hey, I'm done this page, they'll be like, thanks, money sent. Whereas the $500 client will be like, we're going to work together. We're a family. Like, we're going to work side by side. This is super critical. And stuff like that. It's like, dude, we're writing, 500 words in an email form. I mean, it's not that serious. And the big problem with it too is like there are things that come up in websites that cost money. If they want, some sort of really custom, not even really custom, if they want some sort of functionality that, let's say they have a WordPress site and a plugin fulfills what they're asking, but the plugin is $100 a month. But if it's $100 a year, $100 a year is, really not that much. But these people will, well, I can't afford that. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, yeah, but if I make that plugin, like there's a team of people making that plugin and living off of that plugin to some extent, off the licensing fees. You want me to remake that for $100? Like, what do you think is happening on the computer? There's still sort of that negative connotation that we're just sitting around and playing on the computer, or it's simple. I remember I was told just a few weeks ago that like the tools I use are simple. I was like, they're not simple because like that person has called me for a reason. They didn't just call me and be like, man, like, I don't know how to do anything. Like, I better call this guy. They just, for some reason, think that my job is simple. It's like, if it was simple, why didn't you do it yourself? Like, why are you even paying me? Like, what's the point? Kind of thing. And it just doesn't make sense to me in that way. So to sort of like switch gears a little bit, I want to talk about, we've kind of talked about the pros and the cons and what a small business website is, but they're on shaky ground, I would say. Like, we've set them up on shaky ground, and it begs this question, and it's, are small business websites relevant in 2024? And by default, I would actually say yes, if the business is okay with the benefits that I already mentioned above. If they're good with 5 basic pages, they go to events, they have a marketing arm that just needs a place to have people land. Check out our website. Our phone number is right there. Don't worry about it, right? Oh, I forgot my business card. Don't worry. Here's my website. Go here. Or hey, here's my business card. My website's at the bottom. Just go to the contact page. You can reach out to me anytime. A great little bit of legitimacy, a quick tool, right? And they're doing the marketing. They're going to the events. They're chatting with the people. They're doing the thing. That's great for them, right? But in general, these benefits are not enough for many businesses. So getting to, the number one spot on Google, as I've mentioned, is a big request that a lot of people that want small business websites will ask for. The main reason why they ask for this is not just to be number one, but it's because they want lead generation. They want people to type in, hey, like, I need someone to cut my grass and in, I don't know, Baltimore. And they want to show up number one Baltimore grass cutting service, right? Those type of things. And depending on the locale, depending on where you are, and like, there's going to be competitors, chances are, and it's not going to be easy. And people just think, oh, you can just quickly do it. You're just playing on your computer. And that's just not the case. And honestly, a 5-page business website, small business website, is not going to be enough to get you there. You're not going to be able to beat out the competition because you're not just trying to beat them out with one keyword. Usually you're trying to beat them out on a few different keywords. And so 5 pages are just not gonna do it. In my mind, in 2024, a small business website can kind of be compared to a house. This is just an analogy. The 5 basic pages are the foundation, right? You get you're good, right? You have your gallery, you have your About Us page, you have your home page, a little bit of marketing flair with the slider if you want that. You have your contact page so people can call you, email you, find where you are if you have an in-person place like a store, that place that people need to actually navigate to. So that's a great foundation, right? It's a great place to start. And this lines up with what Mike said before, where it's kind of a great starting point. It's like one peg and you need multiple others in order to be successful. So you have your foundation laid. The next thing are the rooms, right? You want to like lay out the rooms, the framing, whatever. So the rooms themselves, without the contents within them, are the content. Those are the content topics. You choose like, a living room, but instead of a living room, you're saying like, I want to be, best grass cutter, or like, good landscaping, or like you choose those topics. Those are the rooms of the house. And then the furnishings are the actual written content. You going in and writing the blog post, writing the guides, writing the whatever. And blog post is something that many people shy away from. They go like, oh man, it's a blog post. Like, this isn't a blog. This isn't a blog. Like, blog still has a bit of that reputation of being like someone's like public journal in a little bit. And that's just not the case. Like, you can really just sort of think of it as, hey, like, you need to tell people why you're the best grass cutter for this thing. Or, hey, you need to tell people that it is difficult to choose the right fertilizer, or whatever the topics are that you chose. You need to write real nice articles on them. And then you need to advertise yourself in there. And that's how, you need to do it. And just having 5 pages is generally not going to cut it. So let's just say, for example, you only have a 5-pager. Someone comes to you, they ignore all your advice. They ignore you, telling them, hey, we should go a little bit bigger. And they just say, no, I want a 5-pager and I want it to work for SEO. So can SEO work for a 5-pager? In theory, the answer again is yes. This depends on the niche and the SEO of the pages themselves, right? Meaning the content on them, what they're covering, those type of things. A small business could possibly get some good leads if they have, let's say they just want local leads and there's not a lot of competition. They may, with just a few pages and a little bit of, work in the algorithm into those pages a little bit, maybe they skip the gallery and they just write some, 4 or 5 real nice, just sort of pieces. Sure. Maybe they're going to get some business. For example, you're in a small town. There's only one ice cream parlor. They have a 5-page business website that doesn't even have nice content really, but they're the only ice cream parlor in the area. Sure, their 5-pager is probably doing great for them. It's probably perfect. They don't need to write about the flavors of ice cream and why ice cream does this and that and like all the rest of it. Of course, right? So yes, SEO can work for a 5-pager, but the ways in which it does, or the scope of success is limited, right? It's really specific. It's almost like niche little areas where it's like that person has no competitors and they only want to sell in like a three block radius. So they don't want to sell in this one town. That's, great. But if you want to go into a huge city where there's like 15,000 grass cutters and you're one of them, I mean, having a random 5-pager website you paid $500 for is not going to get you to the top. The big thing you need to do, and this is the conversation that I kind of pushed off earlier, is SEO. And with SEO, content is king. You need to do keyword research. This is a hard-pressed topic, whether it's you that's doing it as the web dev agency or whether you want the client to actually do it. It's a hard-pressed topic. We get people push back on this constantly. And it's just like, I'll like talk to them like all the time. Like, you got to learn how to do keyword research. Like, if you're the one writing the content, you got to learn to do this. It's a skill you have to learn. I understand it's difficult. I understand you're busy. That's cool. It doesn't matter. Google didn't ask if you're busy. It is getting constantly hit with people trying to play the algorithm. So you need to play that algorithm to an extent. And I don't mean scam it. I mean, you got to learn proper heading structure. This is too long, that's too short. Like, have proper descriptions, have proper titles, have like nice open graph stuff for when people share on social media. Like, you need to have good things. And all of that stuff starts with keyword research. So you know what content topics you should be talking about. If every single person is talking about how the latest, John Deere grass cutter, lawnmower, whatever, is the greatest, and every person has an article on that, maybe that's too challenging. Maybe you need to talk about the next brand down, the next niche brand down. No one else is talking about that, but 100 people are searching it. Maybe you can get 5 leads from those out of those 100 people. So maybe you can write that article. That's from keyword research. Then you can find nice pictures for the open graph. Then you can find out what headings you need. It all stems from keyword research. It's so important. And so many people are like, it's, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Like, that's a marketer's job or whatever. But it's like, you're running a small business. Like, you can't hire a marketer right now, or your marketer's too busy. You have to learn this. It's like, yeah, but then I got to like figure it out. And that's kind of a computer thing. It's ridiculous. Like, you have to learn keyword research if you're going to be the person doing content generation that's relevant and lead generation worthy. For example, you write a guide on VPS hosting. If you're a web host, of course, you write a guide on it. Like, you say, like, this is what VPS hosting is, or like, this is the benefit of VPS hosting, or things like that. And then at the end of the article, you mention your service. That's good content. Like, the content is for everybody, right? Anybody and everybody who's looking up what VPS is, what VPS does, whatever the specific topic is you're writing about. You're not just saying like, hey, I have a VPS service. I have a VPS service. I do VPS hosting. You put that at the end, or you sprinkle it throughout. But the article itself is great to grab a bunch of people's eyes. Like, hey, this is what VPS is. This is what it does. This is what it's about. This is why it's challenging to manage. I do the management. Why don't you come to me? That's how you're kind of trying to write your content. And it's not easy. You're competing with other people. Other people are going to write articles that try to overwrite yours or push yours down on Google or get one up on you or whatever. The one thing I like to compare, and I do tell clients this, is you can think of good SEO sort of centric written articles. You can think of those SEO articles for just to make it shorter than what I just said. You can think of those SEO articles as multiple flyers, like physical flyers. Sure, one well-placed flyer may generate you a bunch of leads. You put it on the right corner, the right time, people see it. There's for some reason a huge need for that, a huge want for that, and they call you like crazy. So you get a bunch of leads. That might happen. But the chances of success is much higher if you have several good flyers placed around in strategic spots that are well thought out throughout the city or the town. It just makes sense. Because some people don't live in that neighborhood, so they never go over there, but they still need grass cutting. Even though you put one in the main square, I mean, maybe there's not a lot of grass in the main square. It's concrete jungle. Maybe, it's more or less in the suburbs. And you know what I mean? So like you need to have, you need to raise your chances of success by having more flyers or more SEO friendly articles written and put out there. And this is well beyond the scope of the small business website, the small 5-pager basic website. And that's what makes them seem, these 5-pagers, it makes them seem irrelevant in 2024. And I just don't think that's the case. They're not irrelevant. You just need to know what they're capable of. They're limited in their capabilities. But we've had people, and like Mike, you can attest to this. We had a guy we helped 3-4 years ago, literally 4 to 5x his business because we made him a small, not even 5-pager, a 1-pager business website, got his Google My Business card on Google Maps and in the search. We got it all, nice and sorted out. We got everything all like kind of just cleaned up for him. So it's just, he looks like, just looks like a professional online. He tells people about his business. He's in a niche area. So people Google it and he's the only one there. And we have 4x'd his business. And he to the point where he has an employee now. Like this is that is a life-changing amount of stuff from something that's less than a 5-pager. So it is relevant. But it's just not relevant in a lot of cases anymore in 2024.
So the only counterpoint I have for that argument, Matt, and that specific client is that the 1-pager made sense for his business. It's cheaper, less work for us, less work for him. It's a good relationship in that sense. It just made sense for that fit. I think there would be diminishing returns going from a 1-pager to a 5-pager. That's the problem. Is like we're trying to justify the 5-pager, which is a very traditional type of website these days. Right. Very old, like maybe old school, whatever you want to call it, versus the 1-pager, which was what we built for him and what 4x his business. If we built the 5-pager, I don't think we would have seen much of a difference from the 1 to the 5-page.
None at all, I don't think. Yeah, I agree.
I think it would have been the same 4x. He would have had his online presence, and that's it. Like there would be no difference. So the question is like, does the 5-page business website make sense right now in the form that you've described it as, like very hands off on our end? SEO is kind of in the hands of the actual owner. And like, again, like I really don't see a reason for a custom built 5-page website from a web dev agency in this day and age. Now, people will still sell them. People will still buy them. I'm not saying that that's going to go away anytime soon. I just think there's better ways to do it. And Matt, like in the next segment, Matt's going to describe one that is exactly what I would recommend too. So I'm not going to kind of step on his toes. But overall, like giving the reins to a $500 website to a customer and be like, hey, create content for this is almost a guaranteed failure.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, like they asking them to understand what keyword research is, asking them to create content, blog posts outside of their regular work. Because like, remember this is something they're going to have to do on top of their work. This is not something that they can do like during their work because it's not part of it. And it's just not doable. Like unless they're already content heavy and content understanding, the reality is that if they already are savvy enough to know they need content, they're savvy enough to work with you on a much more grander scope, which is outside this 5-page website discussion. So you have this like weird area where like they're either in the know and they know they need something more, or they're not in the know and they're not able to take advantage of what you're going to build them. So that's why like I almost don't see a reason to ever build something like this for a client, because there's something less heavy on our end that we could do that would give them the exact same results. That would only take us maybe like a day or even less. And there's something way more heavy that we could do that would give them much better results, but will require much more funding and much more collaboration and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a very good point. Like we've said so many times, like use the right tool for the job, and like the one pager for that person was the right tool for the job, right? And so like you don't have to stick to that very strict, like, hey, it's a classic 5-page small business website. If they don't need more than 1, 2, or 3 pages, maybe that's it. You know, that's all they need. Like look, like what Mike actually you mentioned earlier, like be a solutions architect. Don't be a salesman of like, buy the gold package, buy the small business package. Like instead be sort of like, okay, what do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for to get out of this? Because, you know, it's the one size fits all, the one size fits most solution. It just doesn't really jive anymore. Like it isn't the case. Like we mentioned the cases in which it does fit, like the small business site or even the one pager, and they're limited now, right? And times move on. I mean, 10 years ago, maybe like a 5-pager website would have been great. And in a larger locale too, in like a small city, you know, maybe it would have gotten you a lot further. But now, like a lot of these guys are getting smart and they go, okay, that's it. Let's get a content writer, you know, let's get 100 articles written up and we'll slowly publish them and things like that. Like there's absolutely people out there, you know, fighting for space, fighting for leads. So we've put a lot of information in your head at this point. And you as a small business owner potentially may be like, whoa, you know, what is going on? What should I do? You as a web dev agency owner or a freelancer might be thinking, you know what, like, what do I tell small businesses to do? And honestly, a lot of the time for these small guys, I will become more of a consultant and less of a developer. And that's okay. I will come in and say, okay, this is what you should do. This is whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so I have 2 sort of really basic high-level suggestions. The first is if the budget is tight, and the next one if the budget is not tight for the client. So this is from the agency or the freelancer's perspective. So the first one here, if the budget is tight, I almost always recommend that person go DIY, either completely or a little bit at least, or assisted. What do I mean by DIY? I mean, use a website builder. Use WordPress plus Elementor hosting, right? Like it's an all-inclusive service, and do that. And that's like a little more involved than some others out there. Like use a Squarespace, use Wix. Don't even use Webflow. Like I'm not even recommending Webflow necessarily because Webflow is very customizable, has a lot of power. Use something that's just easy. Like at the end of the day here, you're trying to do lead generation. You're not trying to be like, oh, but I want a custom site just to say I have one. Yeah, but you're paying for like a custom site that's very low budget. Like it's going to be a low budget custom site. Go to these, you know, bigger operators, learn their tools a bit, and that's it. And then oftentimes, you know, make sure the website builder has a CMS, of course, right? So like a WordPress plus Elementor, like I said. And then maybe if the software allows, you can add a writer at some point down the road, whether it's you, a friend, or someone you hire, and they can help write some SEO friendly blog posts, right? If the budget is so tight that you can't do that, you yourself, like the small business owner now, I'm talking about the small business owner. The small business owner should learn how to write SEO friendly blog posts, should learn how to write via keyword research to guide what they're doing. They can learn how to use AI to get assistance. And yes, I know people are upset about plagiarism and things like that. So, you know, assist them. If you are consulting the small business owner, assist them and say, use AI, but use it as a helper. This is how you get assistance, you know, get some ideas, get some brainstorming, tell it, oh, you know, I wrote this article. I don't like the title, you know, rewrite this title in 5 different ways. Oh, I like that and that. Okay. Like that's how I'll change my title up. Like we do that all the time. It's just another thing to bounce ideas off of. You don't have to copy what the AI gives you verbatim. I know some people do. I'm leaving that to whatever moral ambiguity. It's up to you. But like we haven't on the site. Like I haven't. I've been writing everything. And if I need a little bit of help and I'm like, I just can't get this sentence or this paragraph to sound good, I'll get a little bit of help. Like, hey, what do you think? And it'll usually write it like not the way I want it, but it'll give me an idea of like, oh, okay, I'll like change the sentence up a bit type thing. Learn how to sell your product in a blog post. Like teach your client. If you're the freelancer, you're the web dev agency, be that consultant and say, all right, you're trying to sell, I don't know, Samsung phones. Sure. Well, one of the major problems with Samsung phones is how to open the camera app. This is a totally fake thing. So write a guide on how to open the camera app in Samsung phones. That helps all Samsung folks or whatever. And then say at the bottom, by the way, you can get Samsung phones for 50% off from my refurbishment service or whatever it is you have. Learn how to have that sales pitch. Learn how to do those backlinks and those type of things. Teach them how to write an SEO friendly blog post. And then if they run with it, they run with it. If they don't, they don't. But at the very least, you're not in, the shite being like, oh my God, I'm knee deep in this project. It's been 2 months. I've only been paid $500. They're the customer's pissed off. I'm confused. And it's just a nightmare. No, be more of a consultant. Tell them your budget's not high enough. I think you should do DIY. I can help you with that a little bit here and there. If if you don't want to do that, whatever. And just, you dip your toe in, you help them out. And that's that. One of the things that Mike and I will do, and we don't have to do this, but a lot of times, I can tell pretty quickly that I'm going to turn someone away. But we very, very rarely turn someone away without any sort of assistance. Especially if they're a small business or a solo entrepreneur or something like that. I'll say hey, I recommend you do this. We're just not willing to do that this time, or we're too busy or what have you. But we recommend you do this. We recommend you do that. That's, it's a great little way to send people away. It doesn't burn a bridge and it helps them out. And if they want to call, you can even say yo, if you want to have a call to discuss this, I'm willing to do that depending on how available I am. Now, if the budget is not tight, if the budget is, the small business does have a budget of some sort, I recommend, they do hire a web development agency or a marketing agency, right? Maybe they hire you as the freelancer, the web developer, and they get a site developed. Whether it's using a website builder or not, it depends on the budget. The big thing is SEO, right? Prepare a list of topics that the business covers. And so basically you as the business owner, you would write down, okay, I do this, I do that, I do this. I want to be, I want to be the number one lawn cutter person in Baltimore. I want to be the number one lawn cutter person in LA, whatever. And hey, this is what I want to do. Write it down just in plain English and then hand that to your web development agency or your marketing agency that you hired. They'll take that and they'll be able to come up with a list of SEO friendly blog posts. And then because you have a budget, they'll go and they'll run with it. They'll look up all the keywords. They'll write the articles. They'll put together the site. They'll do this and that. And that's a great thing. And you've basically just done everything that the person with the tight budget has done. It's just you as the business owner are more hands off and you've handed it to the web dev agency or the marketing agency. So that's, in my opinion, what small businesses should do in 2024. We've had success, assisting people, with this being more of a consultant role or being more involved if the budget is not too tight. This is not a one size fits all. I want to be clear. There's going to be some, some people might be this is horrible. This is not going to work for my business. And maybe it won't, there's tons and tons of businesses out there. We even dealt with even close to all of them or all the types even, of course not. But this is what we recommend to people. This is how we approach people. And we've been doing this for 8-10 years, something like that. So this is how we deal with people. That's how we deal with small businesses. That's how we deal with cold calls when people cold call us. But that's it. That's the episode for me. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Mike.
Yeah, just one little thing. I think honesty and just being not blunt is a bad word because it has negative connotations, but being very upfront with where you're at and what you can do for someone. So, promising someone the moon when you can only deliver, a tower or whatever, however you want to do an analogy like that. You can't overpromise and expect a good relationship. You also can't overstate yourself to the point where you're willing to take on any client at any budget. I think you need to come up with your own set of rules that you're willing to work with through experience or through advice that we give or through advice that others give. We're not the only source of truth out there, obviously. Do your research on it, but find your kind of your lines in the sand where you're going to draw them. Approach every conversation with those lines and your goal in every conversation with a potential client or a client is you're working together towards a common goal. That's how you have to view it. They're not trying to play you. You're not trying to play them. The goal is to create a good solution for someone. How you get there is wildly different almost every time. But if you both, the client and you, have that same mindset, it's a very good recipe for success. That's how I've learned, is that when you can tell that the client is goal oriented and solution oriented and sees value, and you are the same way, you're both going to work together to get to that end goal, and it's going to make it way easier rather than like the typical, hey, here's what I need, and just a ghosting of the client and not caring about the end goal of the project until, you know, the time to pay up, I guess, comes and stuff like that. Like, it's just, there's a lot of issues that can arise in that kind of scenario. Yeah,
we're more solutions architects, especially these days when, you know, you could talk to somebody and they ultimately might not even need a website. They might need a newsletter. Like, and you're just like, well, hang on, you know, I'm not going to build you a newsletter tool. Go to, you know, whatever, Constant Contact, bunch of other ones out there. Go check those out. And this is how many users they have and whatever. And this is what we recommend. Or we've had people come to us and they say, we want to write a blog, but, you know, I want to be on a discovery engine of some sort. It's like, cool. Okay. Go to Medium, go to, you know, some other thing, go to Hashnode, whatever, start your blog there. Like, we've helped people do that. Right. And sometimes they're a little disappointed that they don't get the custom work, but at the same time, it's like, that's not where they should be. Like, they're like, you're trying to solutions architect, like, you're trying to help them get to the goal. Like, that's it, you know, and that's it. Like, that's the whole story is you're trying to be a solutions architect. You're not necessarily always trying to be a web developer. Web consultant is totally fine, you know, and if you're too busy and you just can't take it on, tell them that, hey, I can't do this. I've done it recently. Hey, I got 2 things on the go right now. I can't look at it for 2 weeks. It's a small problem you have. Can't look at it for 2 weeks. Sorry. That's it. I have nothing else to say to them, you know, then that's it. If they don't like it, well, dang, you know, like, at least they weren't left hanging, and that's just the way it goes. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you did, and you want to support episodes like this, you can do so at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things. Many thanks to our $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com. Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com. Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com. Joshua via silvio.us. And Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. Also, remember that we have a Scrimba affiliate link. It is only an affiliate link as of recording this. It may be a discount code that will, of course, be disclosed on htmlallthethings.com in the show notes, so you know what's going on there. And we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.